The following hour is brought to you by MidasResources.com, your trusted source for precious metals since 1996. Call Midas today at 1-800-686-2237.
Good morning once again. Good morning and welcome to the second hour of Uncommon Awareness. As I said earlier in the program, we are here with Desert Owl, and Desert has an extraordinary life and life experience and gleanings and revelations and research to share with us. So we're going to have him on all week. And we're going through anatomy of a political activist, and I was thinking during the break, there is an anatomy, there is a structure to it. It starts with questioning what's going on around you. It starts with no longer willing to go along with the status quo, to question, to ask questions, to ask why, to ask what's happening. And it leads to, some people, when they get onto particularly powerful information, are in fact, they try to take them out. They try to take them down. And we've had several people on the show that have shared their success in that they didn't back down. And we've got Mike Ellis, who's now basically got a case before the court in District of Columbia against the IRS. We have people that are standing down the corruption of the grand jury, the grand jury process and what the grand jury is. There are people that are going to meetings around the world to fight off Codex, and particularly Codex Alimentris. Scott Tips was on. And this is what part of what's required. Do, be, do, be, do. We be, we do, we be, we do. It isn't enough to become an enunciate and to simply think you're going to meditate your own soul into salvation when the world is coming apart around you. This is a time in human history when each and every person has to become active in revealing what's actually taking place and turning the world into it was primarily intended to be for life, in particular human life and consciousness. So welcome back, Desert.
Thank you, Lorraine. And it's hard to follow a long train of thought with the commercial breaks. As you know, on my network, therealpublicradio.net, we had no commercials, so we could literally roll and go into a long, deep discussion. But I want, since it's challenging, and I don't want this story to be about, or the discussion to be about my story, because it's not about me, it's about what I've learned. So I want to give a few sound bites right now that I wrote down during this last commercial segment. And the propaganda news, of course, all propaganda, none of it was true. Basically, and let's talk with media first, okay? Media, it's not what they're saying that you want to hear, it's what they're not saying, you see? And if people don't know the issues, then they're going to think that everything they just heard is relevant. They want you to think about Tammy and Bippy, and how their lives are so important when people in the world are dying, and they want you to be involved in the private lives of other people. They think that's national news. Or they talk about, the war, this war, that war, and the other war, yet nobody really knows that the war has a whole other agenda, and they don't even know that there never has been ever a legitimate war, at least not according to my knowledge and my research, that all wars are political, and that they put people on the front line, typically, as Montesquieu said, to make sure they don't come home. Why do you think they put red coats on British soldiers? Would you put a bright red coat on and want to go somewhere and fight a battle? You couldn't hide behind a tree in a red coat, So go figure, you're a target. And so the media, it's not what they say, it's what they don't say that you want to hear, and you have to know the issues. So just like they got us thinking that the Bilderbergs are the ones taking over the world. Then some people figure it out and they get a little further, then they think it's the Jewish banking. But then they go a little further and they think it's the Queen of England. Actually, the layer of the onion is like this. It's the corporate illusion. Then it's the crown. People figured out, oh yeah, we're still under the control of England. But then they finally figure out, oh yeah, that the Queen bows down to the Lord Mayor of the City of London, who is Jewish banking. And then when you read the Catholic Encyclopedia, you find out that the Jewish banking, the Bowers, Rothschild, Red Shield family are the protectors and defenders of the Vatican Trust. So they're holding the money for the Vatican. But then nobody can get past the Vatican, okay? And that's the core of the onion. past the Vatican is the Hindu, ancient Aryan Brahmin priesthood. That's what we'll talk about later this week, if heaven permits. And but the religion, you see, because religion is the opium. They knew that's why the Roman state became a religious state, because they knew that Mithraism was out when Christianity was growing, and so Mithraism converted itself into Christianity. All of the pagan idols became what we call Christian idols today. Idols everywhere. Idols mean nothing, and so they got us under the spell, and it's the ultimate mind control. The mind control began in Europe first, and why do you think they called them Europeans? Because peonage means slavery. Peonage means slavery. And where did everybody march when they marched right back into Rome? On the Appian Way. The Appian Way, if you know the root form of diction, the A could be silent. And so it was the peon way. It's where all the peons came to be good slaves in the Roman state, and the Roman state lives today. We went back under Roman civil law, 1933, and they did away with all legislative law dealing with common law, starting with the Tompkins-Erie Railroad case, yada, yada. So we went bankrupt in the 30s, okay? And they never told us that on the news, did they? No, because the Zionist news runs the show. And the political state, Washington, D.C., could not exist if the great show did not go on with Hollywood and the news media, ABC, NBC, CBS, all of the alphabet soups. Political state could not exist. They got us to think Washington is the head, Federal Reserve is the tail. It's the opposite. Federal Reserve runs the show. They're the holders in the bankruptcy. And Washington, D.C. is a puppet show, nothing other than an illusion. Don't give it any credit, or don't call your congressman, okay, because they've been kissing your babies and kissing you off from the beginning, okay? Schools, what they don't teach you in school is what you wanted to know. They don't teach you about money, the true nature of money, and there is no money today, okay? They don't teach you about the law, because that's why they got 4 or 5 million people in prison today. How could it be that there are more people in the prisons of America today than all of the other nations of the world combined? Is it possible that there are more bad people in America than the rest of the world? I don't think so. I think it's the greatest show on earth, going under the Babylonian Talmud. The court system is run under the Babylonian Talmud, and that's why the judges are writing off a prosecutorial court system and putting all of these good people in prison. 70% at least of the people in prison today don't belong there. They don't teach true history, because whoever wins the war writes the history book. There's no true science, and there's nothing else that's true that I found, other than when I discovered the truth, I found out that everything else was a lie. There's my sound bites, Lorraine.
Well, thank you. And, going to science, which is really where I have more awareness than politics or anything else, I can tell you that science is absolutely and utterly corrupted. And when there are very progressive, innovative, catalyst types of findings in science, it is basically moved into the arena of privatization. It's moved into the military-industrial complex. It's moved away. There are certain things that we're not allowed to learn in science. And the truth of the matter is and people, when I was first hearing this, I wasn't quite sure. But today I understand this is true. We are technologically probably 100 years more advanced than what the general public understands, meaning there are people on the planet that are utilizing technologies that are 100 years in advance of anything we really know about. They talk about quantum computers coming online and what they'll be able to do. I believe they're already utilizing them. They're utilizing anti-gravity. They're utilizing a number of different findings that could free the world from dependency on oil and, nuclear proliferation and so forth, and we're just not, it's just not permitted to be a part of the public landscape. So I'm with you on that. And as far as education goes, they don't teach you anything that's relevant. Why aren't they teaching kids how to balance a checkbook? Why aren't they teaching them about money and interest? Why aren't they teaching them to be proactive in terms of the choices they will make as young adults? This is the thing that concerns me, Desert. My daughter.
Because true freedom is in the mind. That's where the true freedom lies. Because if you can think for yourself, if you can analyze, process, you can be set free, because nobody can control your thinking. They're controlling the thinking, and that's where it all begins. And ultimately my final wake up occurs when I'm laying on concrete in a cinder block cell. By the way, I spent half a year total in the whole 3-month stretch one time at my request, just to get away from what we call the cheese eaters, who are there to make sure you never get out of that jail situation because they're paid little puppets. They become twice the slaves when they go to jail. They're so scared to save their worthless little hide that they'll do anything to sell somebody else out within the jail system. That's what the mind control system is. I mean, right on the corporate stationery there in West Virginia, they regionalized all the sheriff's jails. Jail would be sweet compared to what the regional jails are. State-of-the-art mind control, pastel color, pumpkin suit, manipulation, and so on the stationery, the second line after Northern Regional Jail, it says right there on the jail stationery, Department of Military Affairs. Okay, all police. If you read Black's Law Dictionary, it says that police are quasi-military. Well, quasi-military is like quasi-pregnant. Okay, you can't be a little pregnant. Either you're military or you're not. So all the police are military. It's called unannounced martial law rule. Unannounced. When we went under public policy back in the 30s with the Foreign Emergency Powers Act, they declared us the enemy. Who? The bankers declared the people the enemy, and that they now were working under the illusion of law. It was really commerce, and that they were working under public policy. Just as long as we keep the peace and don't let the cat out of the bag, we can keep business as usual. Okay? So they got us to think we were still free when they enslaved us. So I wake up on a concrete slab. I'm framed for a crime I didn't commit, and I actually defended somebody's life. And they committed this scenario where I had to defend somebody's life so that they could have a rap on me. I just moved into the middle of an ongoing sting operation where my radio sponsor declared her sovereignty and freedom, and then the feds come in and they ultimately declared a righteous political statement. They walk away, and the head of Bethany College, friend of Robert Byrd, Senator Robert Byrd, who was the head of MKUltra Mind Control, working with the Freemasons and the Klan over there in West Virginia, the ancient river pirates of Ohio and West Virginia. Ran the conspiracy to destroy some lives because they knew too much. The smallest county in America, where Ethley Bailey, one of the famous attorneys, about 20 years ago on national television, said, "If you ever want to have a murder, go unsolved. Have it happen in Brooke County, West Virginia." Because that West Virginia, Bethany College, was the backyard, the college for all the Chicago mob. They put all their children in Bethany College. So it's a criminal racket. There is no legitimate government. There are some good people in government, some wonderful police officers I've met, but they got most of them under the mind control, and that's why they made a public policy of hiring police officers that get a low IQ and no one with a high IQ score can be a police officer because they can think. So they got Bubba and Boo Boo to do their bidding for them, and they'll kick you in the teeth if they tell you to do so. They'll do their job. Just doing my job.
That's right.
That's all.
Hold on. Okay, we're going to break. Going to break, listeners. And I hope, I hear the emotional intensity, but...
Hi, Dr. Hurley here to give you information you may not want to hear. Approximately 70,000 chemicals are currently used and released into the
segment, and I
vitality.
Listeners, there was a lot of, certainly a lot of emotional power and force behind the last segment, and I can only imagine why. I completely relate to to what it means to get onto the truth and to be working with the propaganda, the lies that we've been told. We're free. We have rights, right? That is until you begin to talk about how that's not true. And then you find out very quickly how much freedom you actually do have or don't have. And there are people all around the world today that are being illegally imprisoned for simply speaking the truth, or they're being involuntarily committed to mental institutions, anything to keep people from sharing the message so that we can pull together to do something about this. The show is focused on solutions. Sometimes, sometimes I get so incredibly overwhelmed. Where do we start? How do we do this? And this is why I shared we are going to be starting a collective intention, because prayer, we do know that human consciousness changes things. We have to first appreciate that we're not operating from a level of true free consciousness. We're operating with a program. Most of us have been programmed, and we're going through life running the program. And this is about trying to help us override the program, right? Would you say, Desert, override the program?
Well, that's the objective, is to override the program. And you know, yeah, I do speak with a little emotion. It probably won't be this way the rest of the week because I love history and it's a different flavor. But when I have the record for the longest case in West Virginia, 26 months of torture in what they call a prosecutorial state, that is, what do you call it, a plea bargain state. A plea bargain state because when I was in there, of course, I'm still a researcher even though they're railroading me. And I still do my homework and I'm doing interviews and learning. And I learned that in West Virginia, 90% of the people that are accused of a crime plea bargain themselves into prison. They're told that, hey, Bubba, you either you agree to plead, and we'll give you we're giving you 10 or 20 years, or you're going to look at 100 years. Okay, so you better just plea bargain. And so I learned that 90% of the people that go to prison in West Virginia don't go to trial; they go to prison. They plea bargain with the truth. They're innocent. Half the people in there are innocent, and that includes those who are accused of what we call baby raping, child abuse. It's the greatest tragedy because there's no greater humiliation than to be falsely accused of, abusing children. And they get these men and women so terrorized that they'll agree to a falsehood that they've, beat or sexually abused their child and do 10 or 15 years and lose their life. Because the system needs their body, because it's good for business. And so, 90%. So I told them, I said, you people are crazy. I wouldn't plead with the truth. And I didn't even agree to talk to the attorneys. I got beaten up in a courtroom because I wouldn't sit with them. The first 3 times the judge walked into the courtroom when I'm charged with first-degree murder, I sit down, I don't stand up. They say, everybody rise. I stayed seated in a pumpkin suit with chains on because I knew that his buddy, the sheriff, and then there's assistant, special investigator, were all henchmen in a criminal conspiracy to commit murder, and they framed me, and nobody knows the meaning of the word framed until you've been framed, and you can't begin to appreciate those words. And so I walked in, so the judge walks in, and I look him right in the eye, and he just walks past me. First thing I said in that courtroom when after 4 months to the second grand jury time, I get before the judge, I say, I want to indict the sheriff on criminal charges of murder. Should have seen and I had Channel 5 News there as well from Wheeling, but, of course, they control it all, so it doesn't matter, but at least I got on record. But so after 3 times I go to that court, and they say, everybody rise, and I remain seated. Then the 4th time, the judge walks in when I'm in the courtroom, and the bailiff walks in, he says, everyone remain seated. And so for the next 2 years, everyone remained seated in that courtroom, and nobody ever stood for the judge again. Because I learned something. I learned that I've got power. They say that on the 5 o'clock news in Steubenville, Ohio, that the individual I shot was a brain surgeon, when it was really a clinical technician who lost the job that they had because they were manipulators and obviously part of the mind control program, and that Amy Garez of the Wheeling, West Virginia newspaper every month wrote about me 20 outright statements of falsehood or lies, and yet once never did she ever come and talk to me. And in the courtroom, I pointed at her and I said, you come and talk to me. She never did, but she could write about me. You see, it's all control of information. So by the time I got to the mental hospital, I started publishing the story. I even got the psychologist to make copies for me of my documents, and until he was told, you better stop it. Okay, he was a great guy. So my battle was unconventional.
We have to go to break. And listeners, when we come back, I'm going to share a personal experience of someone being framed and how it happened, a friend of mine, her husband. So when we come back, I just want to validate or verify that this does actually happen often.
E.com, home of the Berkey Guy.
Mention here that as part of Desert's resume between 2004 and 2011, he had a program called We Are All doing time. It's the Victim in Prison Outreach Program. It doesn't matter whether you are on the inside or the outside, because we are all doing time. And this was a vital program. This gave a forum for families and those that were wrongly incarcerated to tell their stories over the air. And I haven't had a chance to really talk with Desert too much about this, but I want to relate a personal story, because it ties in so well with what he's talking about, with what Desert's experience is all about. I gave a talk a few years back at a tea party. Basically, I was asked to speak about geoengineering, and went up to Boston and spoke with a group of people, and happened to meet a woman there, and we exchanged email addresses, and nothing came of it until one day I got a petition in my box that I decided to sign and pass around. And it was from change.org about a young man that at the age of 24 was put into prison for life without parole for marijuana charges, his third marijuana charge. So here's a man, he's basically put behind bars. So I passed the petition around. She contacted me, and we began a conversation and a friendship. She's trying to get her husband out of jail right now. He was basically framed, and this is the story. She's doing this through the common law routes. I don't have time to go into that right now. But essentially a friend of his, a man he thought was his friend, showed up one night and said, hey, let's go out. So they went out, and they ended up at a store in which this friend of this my friend's husband pulled out a gun and shot someone. Now they're trying to imprison him for accomplice to this crime, and he had no foreknowledge, anything like this going on. He's not a violent man. He doesn't own a gun. And in her investigation, what she basically discovered was that the man that actually pulled the gun and shot this other person was an undercover agent. This man was a cop. And this man had basically set out to commit a crime, and then this man, there's no trace of him anywhere. He hasn't been arrested. You can't find him. There's a whole lot about this. She's an incredibly, extraordinarily strong and intelligent woman. But what she figured out was that her husband was deliberately framed. When I talked to her, I asked her, what's your husband's racial? Is he black? And she said, well, yeah. And I said, the only reason for asking that is because we all know all black men belong in jail, right? If you look at the statistics, if you look at who's incarcerated, the number of African Americans that are incarcerated, given the overall distribution of populations in this country by race, is extraordinary. And so there's this propaganda machine that feeds you this lie that certain races, that a certain color or a certain religion or a certain this or a certain that are dangerous or a threat to you. But Desert, this is actually a person. I'm still engaged with her in terms of her research and what she's doing to try and get him out of jail. She's been standing down the court. She's had a couple of major victories. I don't have time to go into that right now, but I think the work that you're doing, I think everyone needs to understand that, as you said, half the people that are in prison right now have no business being there. They haven't committed a crime.
Right. Well, as I indicated, that I would not fight the battle conventionally. If after these people did everything to destroy my life and the lives of two other people in particular, if you can imagine, them being the mafia, and then the mafia calls you up and they say, hey, Desert, we really feel bad about what we did to you and your friends, and we'd like to make it up to you. So if you want to come over, we'll be glad to play poker with you and give you an opportunity to win back everything you've lost. And so the question would be, would you, if a bunch of criminals just raped you and pillaged you for everything you ever had and ever owned, your reputation, everything, would you go and play with them again? Of course not. So understanding, I just finished reading the book Sun Tzu, The Art of War, and it says that if you want to absolutely have the ability to win a battle, you have to absolutely know who you are, and you have to absolutely know who your enemy is. And I knew both. So I knew that I didn't want to play poker with them, and therefore I was not going to participate in their courtroom charade. And I found out that my silence was the greatest shouting noise I could ever make. And so I refused to stand up in a courtroom. I refused to sit with the attorneys. They broke the nerves in my hands, stomped on my chains, beat me up, and they never. And then when they tried to bring me back in, you're going to sit with those attorneys now? And I quoted Jeremiah, I don't know, chapter 50 or something, one of the verses that says, "Woe unto the man who puts his trust in man, because he has moved away from the Lord." And when the attorney went and told the judge that quote, he says, okay, put him on the side. They never had me sit with those attorneys again. So there was 2 trials. After 26 months of torture, froze out in 2 winters with cold air blowing in my cell, I walked out the front of the courthouse door and saw the Ohio River for the first time. Little did I know that was a view of my future where I'm in Ohio today. But the thing was, when I was laying on that concrete slab, I said, Father, they think they got me in their court, but I got them in my court because I've been serving you all my life. And while I was in this entire odyssey, my life was filled with dreams and visions that I was getting out. And I said, Father, when you get me out of here, I commit myself to bringing public awareness to the mass incarceration of Americans and the criminal racket of the Talmudic American court system that works in tandem with banking. The judge is sitting on the bench. Bench is Latin for bank. Presiding, when the judge comes in and says he's presiding, he's pre-citing. Pre-citing is a word trick, the occult nature of words. Pre-citing with the prosecution. Prosecutor means pro-security. He's there for the security instrument. That's the birth certificate they want to put on Wall Street because it makes them big money. And they will ask you, do you want to represent yourself? They just said, do you want to re-present yourself as a fiction? Do you want to see, the accent is on the wrong part of the word. So that's the occult nature of the racket. It's witchcraft. It's conspiracy against mankind. It's all a civil chain conspiracy. And no one should ever give any legitimate credence to a court system, other than the fact that there may be somebody halfway decent in there that could help you out. Like mine was the senior investigator in the sheriff's department, who was a Christian. And when he saw me getting railroaded, he knew they were hiding the exculpatory evidence in a separate file, not in the evidence file. And after I got railroaded with life without mercy, which means that if they had the death penalty, I would have got it. I had 3 death threats when I got to prison by the sheriff. He gave me 3 messages I'd be killed when I got there. When I found out it was run by the Freemasons and the Klan, I knew it would be true. But if they had the death penalty, I would have got it. So this senior investigator in the sheriff's department came forward with the evidence after praying with his wife for 3 or 5 days, and then came forward with an affidavit saying there was evidence that was not in the evidence file, exculpatory, and he made it look like it was a mistake. So he covered for his guys, but he's responsible for me getting out. And so that's the miracle that the Great Father will put in your path when you trust in Him and not in man. And I'm a little emotional because, this story I don't talk about. This is when I came out, I wanted to be interviewed. I wanted to talk about the anatomy of a political activist and tell people what you're going to be in for when they come for you and they beat you up, and what to do and what not to do, the mistakes I made and the things I did right. And you know what? Nobody cared to interview me. You're the first one, Lorraine, in 13 years now that ever did my story on the radio. So thank you very much and congratulations. It's a little emotional. I'm looking forward to the rest of the week when we can go somewhere else.
No, you're welcome. And it's the reason for deciding to interview you and giving you an entire week is that much of what you have to share we have already shared on the radio, but it hasn't been synthesized. It hasn't been woven into one big story, right? So the idea was that this would be an opportunity for myself and listeners to begin to see how it all weaves together. Last week we had, as I said, National Liberty Alliance, and John Darash came out and said nobody could have convinced him a few years ago that the United States court system was the most corrupt system on the entire planet. And after a few years of being an activist himself and working towards getting justice back into the courtrooms and finding out what the courtrooms actually were, what you just said, it's all about money. It's all about banking. But see, his organization is also they're making great strides, and so we're bringing it on to talk about it because it's important for people to understand. It's really scary, to come to grips with what's happening. But it's important to understand that there are people out there doing work that has some teeth.
Well, with the limited time left, let's try to cap off. So what, in essence, is this beast system that we're dealing with, okay? It is nothing more than another version of the other version of the other version of the other version, okay? Babylon, Greece. One empire goes up, Babylon, Persia, Greece, Rome. Then ultimately, we got Britain, okay? An island nation, a teeny-weeny little island nation, right? Where they put redcoats on men so they never come back home. They're a blank target. So this little island nation conquers the world. The sun never sets. They brag about how it conquered the world. Do you think a little teeny-weeny island nation could conquer the world, Lorraine. Come on, a little island conquer the world, right? Think about it. So now, it's a documented fact that Holland and Scandinavia, the Dutch, they had at the time, England was in its heyday. The Dutch had 2,500 ships sailing the high seas with their Jesuit priests on board. Now, how many? When they had 2,500 ships, do you know how many? Could you guess how many ships England had while the Dutch had 2,500?
No.
About 150. You get the picture? That the Jesuit Vatican Dutch were conquering the world for the illusion of the political corporation state, Great Britain, to go in there as their puppies and their puppets to do this grand scheme. And so what Great Britain was, ultimately America became, it's the next whipping boy. Britain was the whipping boy. Now America evolves into what Britain was. That's why we're all tied together. And so that's why America's hated around the world, because America is now the bad boy. Comes out like red, white, and blue. We're the best thing since Mom and Apple Pie. Well, you get excited about red, white, and blue. Let's see, the Russian flag is red, white, and blue. The French flag is red, white, and blue. The British flag is red, white, and blue. Red, white, and blue all over, and black and blue, too. Okay, so America is now the whipping boy of the world. It's what Nazi Germany was. It's the same deal. It's the same players. It's the same scheme. Okay, the CIA goes around murdering people. Come on, that's America. That's God and country. That's Mom and Apple Pie. Murder, mayhem, war. Go figure. Torture, all good people in America in prison. So, you see, it's the grand illusion. People got to stop supporting the beast and the grand illusion and separate from it. And I don't know. I learned one truth, and it's bigger than me. Okay, I thought I could literally roll up my sleeves when I became a political activist and join a bunch of people and fix Washington and get back to my private life again. And I learned the truth. The truth is the racket's been run from the beginning of time by the unseen hand. Nobody knows their names. They don't know what they look like, but they are Aryan at the core. And that's what we'll talk about later in the week, okay? Because they work under the grand illusion. They control Hollywood. They make the movies. They're speaking to their secret societies in
You don't want to get cut off. We're going to break, listeners. We'll have a few minutes to let him wrap this first of a series of 5 programs he's going to do with us. Who are they? Is where he's leading off.
Total transformation. The step-by-step.
That's 1-888-91 butter and potatoes for total national preparedness.
Okay. That time of the morning when we wrap up the program, you have been hearing really a very emotionally charged account of Desert Owl's beginnings as an activist, taking what he had learned and deciding to put it out to the world to help other people to appreciate what's going on. And the basic premise of his work is that everything is an illusion, that what we think is happening is not what's really happening. And in the last segment, he brought it back to, a main race, the Aryans, he calls them, not you call them, they are. I don't know. I'm going to be learning this week all about that myself. But the truth, here's what we really have to comprehend, is that until we decide things won't be this way, they will be this way. It really requires us to muster our will and our courage and decide that we're done with the charade, we're done with the illusion, we're done with the theater, we're done with the game. And this is one of those programs that is helping us to understand how we do that. So, Desert, we just have a few moments left of the show today.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
How
do you want to wrap up?
Two more sound bites, okay? Number one, I worked with a retired intelligence officer when I first got into this. He was really a double agent. Actually, I finally figured it out. It took me about 10 years to figure it out. And he, just like another one, there's a story about a guy who came back from China as a missionary, Christian missionary, right? Former military guy. Comes back with his Chinese wife. Then he learns about, the bigger picture, and he becomes part of the militia in West Virginia, I believe it was. And his buddy, for 5 years, and then one day his buddy says, look, I can get blueprints to some federal building. You want to get the copy of the blueprint? Sure. I don't know why the guy wanted blueprints. Don't ask me. It's the most illogical thing to ever want. But, I guess people are actually, persuaded into one thing that they shouldn't, area where they shouldn't be. That's what this political movement was all about. And so it turns out when the guy goes to a motel room to buy these blueprints of some federal building, his buddy for 5 years, best friend, was a federal agent. So you see, it's the feds that are really orchestrating everything that's going on. And as my retired intelligence officer friend once told me, any group bigger than 3 people is already infiltrated. So you can have a group, and it's a little stretch, but there's a little bit of truth to that. Because any organization that has any potential, like mine did, United Truckers Defending the Constitution, well, they moved MI6 in on me, okay? And there was like 3 of them ganging up on me at one time, and it cost me everything except my integrity. That's the only thing I had left when it was all said and done, and I lost my house on a lake. I want to remember, with the little time I have left, the former leaders that were out there, that inspired me. When I came in 25 years ago, there were veterans in the freedom movement for 20 years already. Dr. Eugene Schroeder of the agricultural movement, Gary Graham of Take Texas Back, who got poisoned while in prison and died of cancer. Others, Jerry, I can't remember them all anymore, but, they're either dead now, they're murdered by the government, or they're in prison today for life. So I'm alive, I'm a survivor. I've survived when they tried to kill me, they couldn't do it because my father is bigger than them, and it wasn't my time yet, and it's not. I'm not a political activist anymore, have nothing to do with it, okay? I'm a spiritual pacifist. It's about the inward journey. Do you wish to save the world from all of the degradation and the destruction that it seems destined for? Then you need to quietly go to work upon your own self-awareness, okay? Because it's about the inner journey and about your transcendence from this world. This is not your world, if you know the truth. It's the world of darkness, okay? And there's just a few good people in it that deserve to know the truth. That's why I've always been about speaking truth. So any final thoughts, Lorraine? I'm good for it. Okay, that's my speech for today.
Well, thank you. And that's pretty much where we're headed with the things that we're doing, Desert, with this synchronized collective intention. It is about knowing who you are, knowing what you are, understanding that you're a spiritual being having a human experience, and that there are solutions that are not going to be found within the institutions that have created the problems. We have to step outside the institutions into our own, if you will, our own. And then I believe that, as you say, there's synchronicity. There's a remarkable synchronicity that comes into your life when you ask the right questions and you make a decision to be a force for good, a force for sanity in your own life. The way will be provided to you, and I believe that with all my heart. So, Desert, thank you for today. Tomorrow, you have to forgive me. What's our topic tomorrow? I don't even have it up on the board, but eventually we're going to...
Tomorrow is symbolism in words in the Real Da Vinci Code.
Yeah, because words, as we've said often on this program, we've had several people who are word masters share with us the truth is revealed within language once you understand how to truly read it and understand it. Thanks for being with us. We'll see you tomorrow, same time, same place.